If this makes you nervous, or if this makes you nervous, or if this makes you nervous, you probably already have a pretty good idea of what Lockout Tagout is all about. And that's making sure that you have control of hazardous energy before putting yourself in a dangerous position. These examples are simple and relatively easy to control. However, when it comes to Lockout Tagout, we're usually dealing with much bigger and more complicated equipment, but the idea is the same. In this training, we're going to go through the basics of Lockout Tagout procedures. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Lockout Tagout is one of the most important safety concepts in the workplace. Lockout Tagout is the procedure that we use to control hazardous energy during processes like maintenance and inspections. The world we live in is powered by all sorts of energy sources. This energy powers our work. But if this energy isn't controlled, it can be dangerous and even deadly. This becomes especially important during maintenance activities, like inspections and repairs. The way to control hazardous energy is by using Lockout Tagout procedures. In Lockout Tagout, the lock physically isolates the source of energy to prevent any accidental activation. The tag provides important information. Lockout Tagout procedures have 8 basic parts. Number 1, identify hazardous energy sources. Number 2, de-energize these sources. Number 3, apply locks and tags to prevent unintentional startup during work. Number 4, test the system to make sure energy isolation was successful. This is sometimes referred to as tryout. Number 5, then conduct your maintenance work safely. Number 6, once the work is finished, get everyone and all equipment out. Number 7, then you may remove the locks and tags. And number 8, re-energize the system. Control energy hazards to keep yourself and your coworkers safe. Remember, Lockout, Tagout, and Tryout to control hazardous energy sources. When you're working on or around dangerous equipment, you definitely don't want it to move or energize by surprise. The complicated part is, energy can come from so many different sources.
Ow! Ow!
Here are some of the most common ones: electrical, mechanical, hydraulic, radiation, pneumatic, chemical, thermal, gravitational, steam, or potential energy. Think of things like springs,
There are a few common misconceptions when it comes to locking out mobile machinery like this excavator, and I'd like to talk about a few of them today because they contribute to a lot of really serious injuries and fatalities. First off, when I ask mobile equipment operators if they lock out their equipment, oftentimes they'll give me a look that says, well, not always. And the reason for that is they're often the one that's doing maintenance on it. So if you're the operator and you're also the one doing maintenance, it's a lot harder for somebody to sneak up and try to operate the equipment while you're working on it. I understand where this thought is coming from, but to be honest, it only gets at about half of what Lockout Tagout is actually about. Now, the most important component of Lockout Tagout is getting the equipment completely de-energized. The key to keeping yourself safe is by following Lockout Tagout procedures to make sure equipment is completely de-energized before putting yourself at risk. Lockout Tagout needs to be guided by a written procedure. This procedure includes the step for isolating each energy source. Employers are responsible for developing a procedure for the control of potentially hazardous energy. That includes the scope, purpose, authorization, rules, and techniques for controlling that energy. Controlling hazardous energy is serious. I've been on serious injury and fatality investigations when Lockout failed, and both times it was because there wasn't a written procedure in place and a step was missed. Lockout procedures are one of the documents where your life can literally be on the line. That's why it's required that lockout procedures be inspected at least annually by someone who's knowledgeable with the process to make sure it's correct and updated to reflect any changes. These basic steps vary by machine or equipment and workplace, and the specific work that needs to be done. What that means is that each individual machine or piece of equipment in your workplace may have a different procedure. Use your procedures. They're there to make sure you don't miss any energy sources. Lockout Tagout is a procedure that has to be done correctly, or else the consequences can be serious injuries or fatalities. Because of this, as you would expect, not everyone is authorized to perform lockout procedures. Before you take part in lockout, you need to know the 3 roles and identify which one is yours. Authorized employees are authorized to apply the locks or tags to the machines and perform the actual service or maintenance. These individuals are trained to follow special lockout procedures to prevent the accidental movement or startup of equipment. Affected employees are individuals whose jobs are affected by machines being shut down by Lockout Tagout, or whose jobs require working in an area where the service or maintenance is performed. However, the affected employees do not conduct maintenance or service or take part in the lockout. Other employees are those who may need to work in an area where energy control procedures are used. Other employees just need to know about the energy control procedure and not to restart the machines being serviced. Wherever lockout procedures are used, make sure to know your role and responsibilities. Don't perform lockout procedures if you're not authorized to do so. Here we've got a demonstration panel with a simple electrical circuit. This is going to give us a good, easy visual demonstration of lockout, tagout, and test start. First off, we know for energy sources we have electricity. Luckily for this one, that's all there is. As you can see, the circuit is energized. So the next step is to de-energize it. Now we can apply our locks and tags. And lastly, we can do a test start. There's two different ways to do this. One would be to flip the switch and see if the light turns on, which it doesn't. Now, also, we want to check this outlet here. To check if it's live, we're going to use this tester. If we plug it in and it lights up and alarms, we'll know that there's still power to the outlet. Okay, now we've confirmed that there's no power to the system. At this point, it would be okay to go through and conduct work safely. Tagout devices are basically warning labels that are attached to energy isolating devices. They don't provide the physical restraint that a lock does, and it's important to be aware of this limitation. Tagout is actually kind of like putting a robust Post-it note on whatever you're working on. It works as long as people see it and do what the tag says. When a tag is attached to an energy isolating device, it can only be removed by the authorized person responsible for it, or by someone authorized by that person. It should never be bypassed, ignored, or otherwise defeated. Using Tagout alone should only be done when locks can't be used or when you can demonstrate a tag will provide the full levels of protection. Luckily, today there are many different types of lockout devices, and so you don't need to depend on Tagout alone. The tag needs to be readable and understandable by everybody in the work area. This is actually a good time to use your best handwriting skills. They also need to be made of materials that can survive the weather and environmental conditions of the workplace. Then, they must be securely attached to the energy isolating devices so they can't be inadvertently or accidentally detached during use. So in this example, we're going to go ahead and put it on the safety lockout lever. And so any operator who comes in here and tries to use this piece of machinery will know that it's locked out because this is the first place they're going to go to try and operate it. So anybody who came up to this machine would know not to run it right now. They'd also be able to look at the tag and know who to contact with questions, which in this case would be me. The biggest pitfall with tags is that they sometimes give us a false sense of security. After all, it's just a note that can stand up to some harsh environmental conditions. Using locks and lockout devices is the best way to make sure that you have control of the machine or the system. By using locks, you can lock a valve in the closed position, lock a breaker in the off position, lock an ignition key in the box, and many other options. Since the 90s, equipment has had to be designed with lockout points. For equipment that doesn't have it, there are a million different ways to do a lockout, including specialized equipment and less specialized equipment like chains, wedges, key blocks, adapter pins, self-locking fasteners, and much more. There are even group lockout devices that are meant to be used as a crew with your individual locks applied to them. Lockout devices should not be used for any other purposes. For example, don't use your lockout locks to keep coworkers from taking your lunch out of the shared cooler. Get a different lock for that. Locks and locking devices need to be durable, able to withstand harsh working environments, standardized by shape and color to your workplace so that people can recognize them, and substantial enough that they can't be removed without excessive force, like the use of bolt cutters. Your locks need to have individual keys that can't be interchanged with anyone else's in the workplace. This puts the control of the machine in your hands, even if you're working on a group project. The lockout device's job is to hold the energy isolating device in the safe position to prevent energizing or movement. We call the procedure of controlling hazardous energy sources lockout tagout. But that actually leaves out the third, and some would argue most important step, which is test start. In this video, we're going to go through the 3 steps to isolating energy. It's going to be quick, it's going to be clear, and it's going to be easy. So let's get going. We call it lockout, tagout. You know, these are 2 separate things, lockout, tagout. But there's actually a 3rd step in there that is the most important, and that's tryout or test start. Lockout and tagout are what let other people know you're working on the equipment. Test start or tryout. That's what lets you know that your equipment is truly in a zero energy state and is the whole purpose of a lockout. So don't forget that most important step. It's not just lockout, tagout. The most important step is test start or tryout to make sure that your equipment is completely de-energized. Remember that and stay safe. You've seen an animated lockout on stationary equipment. You've seen an electrical lockout. Now let's lock out a piece of mobile equipment before maintenance. In this segment, we're going to demonstrate a lockout using the 3 roles of authorized, affected, and other employees. Let's get started. Conducting lockout tagout during maintenance or repairs involves 8 steps. Number 1, identify hazardous energy sources. Number 2, notify employees. Number 3, de-energize these sources. Number 4, apply locks and tags to prevent unintentional startup during work. Number 5, test start the system to make sure energy isolation was successful. Number 6, conduct the work. Number 7, release from lockout. And number 8, restart the equipment, go back to work. Lockout tagout is a little extra work, but that little bit of extra work can save your life. When doing group lockout, the on-site group must inform the contractor of their lockout or tagout procedures and make sure that the outside crew understands and complies with the energy control program.
Hey, subcontractors, we don't take kindly to your kind around here.
Actually, Jody, it's our job to make sure they can do their lockout safe.
All right, get in here, but don't touch my toolbox.
Group lockout or tagout may be used instead of personal lockout tagout devices and follow the same procedures as we just described. However, there are a few differences. Primary responsibility must be placed on an authorized employee for a set number of employees who will work under the protection of a group lockout device. That authorized employee must identify and understand the exposure status of individual group members with respect to the lockout tagout of the machine or equipment. When more than one crew or department is involved, authorized employees can be designated to coordinate the hazardous energy control procedures. And each employee must put their personal lockout device on the group lockout device and remove their personal device when they're no longer working on the machine. When there's a shift change or personnel changes, you need to coordinate amongst authorized employees to transfer the lockout or tagout device protection between the shifts to make sure that hazardous energy remains controlled and workers continue to be protected from the unexpected startup or energization of equipment.
Mike! Mike! Get off your phone, Fortnite's not going anywhere. I need you to take your lock off the group lockbox. Mike! If you don't respond, I'm gonna have to go talk to safety. Oh, I hate talking to that lady. She always copies my hairdo. Hey, Rachel, I need a lock removal form. I'm just gonna slide it into the bathroom to Mike.
Jody, Mike retired I think 3 months ago. He doesn't even work here anymore.
Oh, then who's in the bathroom?
I don't know. You haven't been harassing people in the bathroom again, have you?
I only got caught doing that twice.
Jody? What are you doing?
Mike signed the form.
That's not how it works. Occasionally, there will be situations where a lock is left on when the equipment is ready to be restarted. The person whose lock it is may no longer be available, on-site or otherwise may not be able to remove their own locks. In this case, you may need to use what is known as an emergency lock removal procedure. An emergency lock removal should only be used if the person who initiated the lockout is not able to complete the lockout process and remove their own lock. The decision for emergency lock removal is made by management. Locks are to be removed only by the site manager or a trained person who's been authorized by the site manager. To remove the locks, you need to verify the location of the person whose lock needs to be removed and make sure that they are absent from the premises or otherwise safe. Try to contact the person to find out the status of the equipment and have the lock removed or notify the person that their lock is going to be removed. Remove the lock and follow startup procedures. After the lock has been removed, make sure the employee is aware that their lock has been removed prior to returning to work. For record-keeping processes, always make sure you complete an emergency lock removal form, which needs to include the date, where the lock or tag was applied, the reason for the removal, notification attempts that have been made for the employee, removal of the lock or tag, and a copy of the notification to the employee that their lock or tag has been removed when they return to work. The most important step of this process is to make sure that the employee who left their lock on won't be harmed by the equipment restarting.
Ouch!
That's why contacting them and informing them of the situation is so critical. Energy powers our work and our day-to-day lives. But to stay safe, we need to be able to control that energy. Lockout, tagout, and tryout to make sure machines and equipment are completely de-energized before putting yourself in a dangerous place. Take care and stay safe.